Good evening, everyone.
Hi guys, very good evening to all of you.
So we are back with the analysis of yet another slot for you exclusively. And before we start, can you quickly tell us how the last slot, and had CMAT been had CMAT happened, it could have actually have been the last exam of the season, but we're still waiting for CMAT. So
we still have one more exam to go.
Absolutely. Do let us know how your exam went. And first up, how many of you actually had a center which was really very far off? So I had to travel for almost 2 hours to reach my center for the last slot, which I think
I can empathize, sympathize. I did that in the morning.
Absolutely. I think
I traveled for almost 3 hours, 45-50 minutes.
So, who all traveled more than I did? How many of you spent more than 120 minutes on the road to reach your center? Do let us know. And how many?
I raised that.
Okay. So Jayesh has also traveled for a couple of hours, and then also let us know what your reading of the exam was. What do you think? Exam was easy, moderate, difficult? Are there any questions that you have in your mind that stumped you and you were still kind of thinking how to tackle those?
So, guys, how did you find the exam? What is your take? Slot 4, easy pickings in reasoning. Abstract was moderate. Slot 3.
Absolutely.
Okay, slot 3 was already done.
No, I think
Jayesh also says moderate.
Okay. Fantastic, guys. Fantastic. Okay.
So, well, guys, we will take you through what we believe, what happened with respect to the first slot, with respect to the second slot, and with respect to the third slot. Vikrant sir over here has actually given the paper. I'm just here to add on a little bit as a comparison because I was there yesterday. I've taken the paper today in the morning. So I'm going to add, act as a supporting role to Vikrant sir's analysis today.
No, I'd rather say the leading role because you would know what happened in all the 3 slots right now. So let us see. So first up.
I was following that.
Absolutely. So here are the key highlights. The overall difficulty level of this particular slot as compared to the previous ones, I'd say I'd actually call it easy to moderate. Since I teach languages and parts of reasoning, I'd say that it was definitely easier compared to what we had earlier in the day, the slot in which Srinivas sir appeared, and then questions were jumbled. So if I talk about my paper, it began with it started with some logical reasoning questions. Then I had 4 RC passages all together. Then some more logical reasoning questions. Then the other part of English, so which had predominantly grammar and vocabulary. Then some more logical reasoning. Then abstract reasoning, and finally all the quant questions were given together. So it was difficult to pick and choose. You could not really refer to one particular area towards the end to maximize your score. I think that's exactly how it happened with the other slots as well. Srinivas sir? So that's how it went.
So in the other slots, so first in the first slot, verbal was very much doable. The RCs were, while there's one RC which was long, there were only 2 RCs first of all, that's a good thing. And 2 RCs contributed to 13 questions, 1-3.
That's nice, that's interesting.
And they were doable. Verbal was quite easy. Quant was very easy. Logic was also on the easy to moderate. It was not really moderate, it was easy to moderate. And abstract reasoning was not a surprise at all. So the first slot, ideally, I would call it as easy, a little bit more than easy, probably between easy to moderate. Second slot had a little bit of a bouncer that way. Abstract reasoning was on a difficult side with respect to the slot number 1. Maths was moderate, English was moderate in the second slot. Logic was doable. So what they did was second slot turned out to be slightly more difficult than the first slot. Third slot, I believe, is the most difficult of all the slots. There were 18 questions from 7 passages in the morning.
True.
That's huge. I mean, the number of passages you have to read is huge. Then there was parajumbles, 5 questions from parajumbles, then about spelling errors. These are things which are not really scoring. So students will make up, will lose a lot of time here. Quant was on the other side easier, but there were 50 questions from Quant and 16 questions from DI in the third slot.
True.
And and logic was again slightly on the difficult side. It was not easy. There were some easy questions, but definitely I will say logic was moderate or in the range of moderate. And finally, abstract reasoning was, so one thing is they maintained abstract reasoning in 3 slots, same. First, third, and fourth. Second slot, abstract reasoning was difficult.
Right.
And finally, to the fourth slot today, I believe what you are saying, sir, is English was doable, which is comparable to the first slot, but definitely easier than the third slot.
Definitely easier than
Quant, I believe the couple of other colleagues who have written the exam, I spoke to them. They were talking about Quant also very much doable.
Okay.
As expected from the third slot, like in the third slot, some questions were repeated from previous years' other exams. 1 or 2 errors were there in the quant and DI questions, I believe. In fact, there was no DI at all. That's one of the big things. Quant itself. Right. Quant itself was having about 50 questions.
So normally when we see exams that happen across multiple slots, they tend to keep the composition of the exam more or less the same. Maharashtra CET is one of those exams where even the composition can change dramatically. CMAT is another one where it can change. So, I mean, imagine no DI at all in one of these slots. So how would you really compare and normalize? That can actually make it a tad bit difficult. But diving...
And no, there's no normalization, I believe. I was just checking it out. MAH CET does not normalize
okay.
the scores.
Fantastic.
That's another problem.
And I have not heard of any glitches or difficulties at the centers today. In fact, the center that I went to...
I think let's check that with the students also. Guys, did any of you have any glitches? Because morning slot, we checked, there were no glitches for anyone. Any of you found any problem, any glitch in the timing this time, in the final slot? Anyone?
Because
no. Okay.
As far as my experience goes, I think after a long time, I reached a center where absolutely no glitches. Everything ran smoothly and there were no breaks, no unnecessary hiccups, which was actually a surprise. So we nowadays, in fact,
server went down at Worli Center.
Okay.
Okay, at least that the glitch Rahul is talking about is not a time-related glitch. It's a server down. That is different.
Absolutely.
My setup had shut down 3 to 4 times. Okay, these are independent events, which is not related to the first slot which happened. The first slot was even throughout the country. There were the timing issue of 30 minutes. That's it.
Which is actually huge. So let's see. So there are other major changes already been dealt with. We had no DI in the fourth slot. Now, if I dive into the paper pattern, we more or less, of course, had that same breakup where the total number of questions belonging to each section were essentially the same.
I believe.
So they did not change. It gives you this additional detail. I believe this was a slot where we had a comparatively higher number of questions for verbal reasoning.
Yeah. So in fact, verbal reasoning. Verbal reasoning in the morning slot was less. We had critical reasoning and assertions and conclusion. Those kind of questions were there, but not as high as 26. Next slot, if I remember correctly, there were about 7, 8 questions like that.
Right.
But then again, here that's a huge number that we're talking about. 26 is a very high number.
Absolutely.
That also brings down the logical reasoning questions to only about 52.
True. So that's definitely
yeah.
The rest
50 from verbal, but the big change is 47 only from quant and no DI.
No DI, absolutely.
So that's the big change, because DI, what I observed is in both the first slot and third slot, when DI came, it came as a set of 4 and they were easy. I mean, relatively easy. You can, if they gave you 16 questions, a decent student could answer 12 questions.
True.
Like today morning slot, one set was slightly difficult, the other 3 were doable very easily. It will not take too much of time. So that's a good chunk of questions which are gone missing now.
Absolutely.
Even in yesterday's slot, there were 3 sets of 5 each, and all 3 were doable, 15 questions. So that's what was missing, I believe.
Absolutely.
And that got converted into the verbal reasoning, and that's where the problem is, sir.
Easy. I think people who've prepared, it was easy. I think I can take up the specific question types if we've jotted them further down. So we definitely pick it up. But quant was surprisingly easy. I have not been polishing my quant for quite a long while, but this was a paper where even when I looked at the questions, I thought that, okay, I can have a realistic shot at solving these. So definitely on the easier side for a large majority. Now, if a message in the chat window, Abhinav, the chat is still disconnected on this slide, if you can check.
Yes, bro. be now.
Okay.
Now
Okay. So, I'm not able to see the chat. I'm not able to see the chat, at least in the screen that I have ahead. But let's see if there is some other. क्या कर रहे हो भाई?
मोबाइल पे एक बार चेक कीजिए सर लाइव।
नहीं आ रहा यार, अभी नहीं आया। आ गया? नहीं, अभी भी अटका ही हुआ है। अब आया शायद। Okay, so I think we are back now. So do confirm us, guys, if you are able to see us, hear us. Do confirm. SD, anyone? I think there's generally a lag of around 15 odd seconds. So we'll just wait in the interim so we can talk about it. Not yet. Okay. Absolutely, Kumar. Okay, but the YouTube. No, I'm also looking at it on YouTube, but okay, yes. Okay, now the people are, yes, even people on YouTube are now saying that we are back. Yes, so I think Sushant, so I'm actually accessing it on the phone, so that tells me that we are there. Fantastic. So Srinivas, should I continue then? Is everything all right at your end too? Okay. So the first passage was very easy, where they just talked about how gravitational imbalance leads to making of a star. A couple of questions could have been tricky. So we had a main idea question, we had an inference based question, and as usual, we also happened to have some one vocabulary based question in this particular passage, along with some others. And after a long time, I have seen a pronoun antecedent question in RC. Remember that question where they pick up a pronoun from the passage and they ask us for which noun it refers to? So fabulous but very easy question. So easy to eliminate. And then we had another passage which talked about the increasing use of a wider color palette when it comes to gadgets and furniture, etc., and the reasons behind that. And once again, this was a passage which actually happened to have mostly easy questions. I think I'd have to use the phone for accessing the chat. So once again, easy. And then there was a passage that talked about ants. Now this was a passage that I've definitely seen in some previous exam. Okay. All right. Sure. So a question that talked about ants, and I know that it has come in some exam previously. I've seen that earlier. So it talked about ants living in a community where they recognize every member. Then there was a hypothesis that they recognize because they have some sign or password, and a test that allowed us to, or helped us to disprove it. So that is what it was about. Again, easy questions. But the fourth passage was a passage which talked about capitalism and how it expands its reach to other countries and the reasons behind it, and how that eventually leads to colonization or the establishing of an empire from a British perspective. Now it was difficult primarily because it used Old English. So the kind of English that it used, the first paragraph was basically just one sentence. Even in the third paragraph, the opening sentence was a little weird. So those of us who have not read a wide variety of English structures could have faced some issue. And the questions, 4 of these were moderate. There was just one question which was easy. So if I had to pick and choose, this was a passage that I would not even attempt in the exam. But of the remaining 3 passages, of the remaining 15 questions, I expect any good student to definitely go ahead and attempt 12 questions and hopefully get them right for sure, maybe even more. And even a reasonably well prepared student could have attempted 10 to 12 questions. Relatively small passages, 5 questions, so it's terrific. 3 of them were also vocabulary based, so that was that. And then if I look at, I think even my presentation here is stuck. I'm not able to change the slide apparently. Let us see what we can do about it. All right, so okay, this works. So then if we look at logical reasoning, we as usual had a very wide variety of questions that were available to us, and you've already looked at most of these, but the composition changed a lot as compared to slot 3. So if I look at it, there were questions on series, coding, decoding, blood relations, and I think blood relation was very easy. Series questions were also very easy. Order and ranking, that's another question type which was fairly easy. There were questions based on clocks, and they were also easy. Clocks, cubes, so some of those basic foundational questions that I believe any reasonably well prepared student could have managed. Matrix based questions were a little lengthy though, but other than that I think more or less comfortable set. But then the surprise was a fairly higher number of verbal reasoning questions that were asked in this particular exam. So when I look at verbal reasoning, there were 6 syllogism questions, where one of them had 3 statements or 3 premises given to us. The other 5 had just 2. Easy pickings. I found one of them slightly confusing because I normally tell people that when it comes to syllogisms, we don't assume anything, right? So there was a particular syllogism questions. If I refer to my notes, I'd be able to see. So there was a premise that used the term open-minded, and then there was this other premise that used the term open-minded people. Now normally we do not assume that these two are equal, but then going by the history, I think some of the people could have chosen it as equal and then could have answered. But if they are treated as not equal, that will lead to a change in the answer. So this is one question which I believe was not formulated correctly. Then statement assumption questions. Oh, I tell you, I in my classes often say that when it comes to statement assumption questions, you basically run a negation test, and anybody who would use negation test could have answered 4 of these questions very easily. One was still tad bit tricky. Then analogy questions, there were 5 of them. 2 were essentially more or less driven by general knowledge, but 3 of them were verbal analogies which depended on your ability to deal with words plus reasoning together. And I'd say when it comes to those verbal reasoning questions, one was easy, verbal analogies, and the other 2 were easy to moderate. None of those can be termed difficult or challenging questions. Then word anagrams. You remember anagrams where they give you the letters and you are supposed to create words out of those? So they gave us, so 2 of those questions basically involved a word. They gave us a word and they asked us how many more words can be created from all the letters that appear in this word. And to make it easy, they also told us that the sequence of these words should not change. So that really was something that turned it into an easy to deal with question. For example, one of the questions, if my memory serves me right, is heartless. Now you notice here is one word that you can create, heart is another, art is another one, less is another one. So there were easily multiple questions that could have been created out of these, right? So year, I missed out on this. So year, so there were 5 words which were created. Similarly, you had another word given to you, laparoscopy, and 2 more which were presented in a different way, but they went on to test more or less the same ability, the same quality. And then we have this assertion reasoning question. Now this is a question type that I personally feel is more of a GK question than an English or a math or a reasoning question. So they give an assertion. For example, one of the assertions given was that amoebiasis is an occupational disease. So you need to determine whether it is true or not. That's GK. Then they talked about that it is it happens when you work in a particular industry, which is again more or less GK. So these 6 questions difficult to slot, but if you're good at GK, you could have answered these, but they're definitely not something that you would put under something that made the exam easy, because 5 syllogisms, 4 statement assumption questions, at least 2 of those anagram questions were fairly easy and doable. Then when it comes to abstract reasoning, as usual, we had 25 questions, easy to moderate, and Srinivas sir has joined us back. So, you offered us a comparison at the beginning. Was it easier than the other slots?
So I believe first slot, third slot, and fourth slot were at similar levels, comparable levels, and second slot was on the higher side.
So second slot was an outlier essentially when it comes to abstract reasoning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So
there were 3 types of questions in abstract reasoning here. I believe there was missing, so there was a series continuation, then there was odd one out, and I believe there was analogy. These are the 3 types of questions that have come.
Absolutely.
No, not analogy. Odd one out. So odd one out. Yeah, that's correct. Odd one out, analogy, and a series, and then the last question mark. So what is the last figure that comes to fit the series? So these are the 3 types of questions that basically came in this particular abstract reasoning section. 25 questions as expected. At least this section was consistent throughout all the 4 slots, except for the second slot, which is an outlier.
I think while going through this, I did realize that some of the questions asked under abstract reasoning were time consuming. So there were some questions where a lot of things were happening in the images simultaneously, and a well-practiced student could have picked those up, but...
so that's what I have taken a lot of sessions on abstract reasoning. That's basically what I tell the students is, look, it will be a mix of few difficult questions. You are not meant to do that. These questions, so if you have practiced abstract reasoning enough, the moment you look at it, you will see by the time you spend 10-15 seconds, you will realize that, look, can I do this in the next 20 seconds or will I have to take more time?
True.
So the moment you realize it can be done in the next 20-25 seconds, you should go ahead and attempt it. If you realize that, okay, there are 5 things changing, like you mentioned, and there are things moving around up and down, left and right, it will take time. And you can end up making errors. So it's not just a question of time anymore. It's both time and what is the final chance of you getting the correct answer.
So question
selection,
selection
those kind of questions should have been left.
So question selection kind of became important. Saurabh is saying that there were 10 to 12 odd one out questions. I thought that there are only a couple of. I found.
I believe this happened in yesterday's second slot.
I think in slot 4 we had just 2 odd one out questions. If my reading.
But Saurabh is also saying that these were copy pasted from one competitive exam of the Northeast. Saurabh, I'm not surprised at all. Okay, I'm not at all surprised by this. In the morning, third slot also I mentioned there were about 10 to 12 questions which are copy pasted and not abstract reasoning. Because abstract reasoning, I did not follow too many exams, but definitely Quant and Logic. And even a couple of RCs, they were copy pasted from a lot of other exams.
Grammar questions.
So that is not at all surprising. It could be possible.
All the grammar questions have also been copied from the other exams that were asked.
Is it?
Absolutely. Well, there were 5 of them. All the 5 have been there earlier. So let's see.
In fact, here I would like to make a couple of comments which I already made earlier also. This is an exam which has 4 different slots. The paper pattern varied across the 4 slots, the difficulty level varied across the 4 slots, and finally there is no normalization. So I don't know why MAH CET does this, to be very honest, but they do it. You have some of the top colleges like JBIMS, Sydenham, Wellinker taking the scores of MAH CET. But that's where it is. Students were asking me earlier, will there be a re-exam? What will they do? Will they give extra marks? Because there were extra minutes given for some students. The answer is simply no. There will be no consideration from their end. At least till now, they have never done that. Even such things happened last year also, last before year also, but they never come back and say, okay, we'll conduct the re-exam, or we will scrap all the students who got 180 minutes. We will only for those we'll conduct another paper. It doesn't happen that way. This year we'll wait and see if the good sense prevails and they do it. But otherwise, the expectation as of now from my side is no.
True. That becomes tricky. So any inputs that you would like to offer for Quant? There was no DI, of course. So
yeah, so
once
Quant,
again-
I believe was easy on the whole. As expected, arithmetic had the huge chunk of questions, 23 from arithmetic. But yeah, the absence of DI is something which I would say, again, it's, I don't know, depending upon what your strength is, it could be working in your favor or not. Typically, DI that happened in the last 2-3 slots, they were doable. So as I said, 15-16 questions come, students usually should be able to attempt 12 to 13 questions.
Absolutely.
But now that DI did not appear and they got converted into verbal reasoning questions. So now, if you are, and verbal reasoning could be tricky for students who are strong in maths and weak in English. If that is the reason, if that is the case, then you will end up losing marks because that's a good chunk of questions which are not coming your way.
Absolutely.
So that is one takeaway. And yeah, geometry is something which did not appear till now. All the 3 slots, there was no geometry. This is the only slot where geometry questions came in. So that's another problem.
Is the number of questions from numbers also on the higher side in this slot?
Oh, very high, very
I
high.
remember
14.
that,
In fact, that's good that you pointed out.
So
14 questions from
that's-
numbers is quite high compared to the other slots. In fact, I believe that in the other slots, this happened and this happened. So the 14 was given a little bit more into modern math. Modern math, we had something close to 7 to 10 questions. So that went into numbers this time. And arithmetic was in the range of 26, 27. But there also the numbers got cut a little bit and they came into the questions got cut and they came into the numbers or number theory topic.
But even
So
has
again,
its-
if a student is not good.
Pardon? True. Integers, HCF, LCM. One question from
Yeah,
logarithm.
all those questions. So again,
yeah, 20 of them.
so many questions coming from numbers,
True.
depending upon whether the student is strong or weak. They would have, liked it or, they would have faced a challenge here.
Absolutely.
But again, that's the problem. When you're giving a question paper which is not going to be normalized, even if it is normalized. See, for example, CAT does this normalization. And what they try to do is they try to maintain the overall level of the paper along with the number of questions coming from each topic. Yes, I understand that 7 questions can go up to 8 or 9. This is understandable.
Minor
Let's say
changes.
3 geometry questions in one paper and 4 geometry questions in the other paper, understandable. But this is a ridiculous amount of variation that we have seen in this, and that will definitely affect the overall difficulty level of the paper. And I don't think any kind of a normalization can do justice to all the 4 different slots in this kind of a variation.
Right.
But yeah, that is if at all there is a normalization, but I don't think there's any normalization anyway happening.
So that brings us to the part that a lot of students are very
The last
keen on,
part,
and that
which
is
is
the
cutoffs.
likely cutoffs. So since you've gone through the
Right.
different slots, I personally
Yes.
believe that if I compare it to slot 3, within English itself, somebody could have scored 6 to 7 extra marks. So as if I
Yes,
compare
that's
it
what
to
we're
slot
discussing,
3,
in fact.
that's something that is likely to push up the cutoffs a little towards the higher side for this slot.
So that's what we need to wait and see, guys. So basically what we are saying is slot 1 was easy, slot 2 was moderate, slot 3 was moderate to difficult,
True.
in between, and slot 4 was again easy to moderate.
So-
So in terms of relatively easy slots, this is slot number 1 easiest, this is slot number 2, this is slot number 3, and this is slot number 4.
Right.
The most difficult was slot 3.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, now given this and no normalization, what could be the cutoff? So because 3 slots, so this is an outlier. I would say this is an outlier.
Absolutely. Slot 3 will be
So mostly the cutoffs will be based on these 3 slots, because maximum students, 3/4, assuming that all students were equally distributed, the number of students, we are talking about 75% of the students giving the slot 1, 2 and 3.
Absolutely.
And slot 1, 2 and 4, whereas slot 3 was given only obviously by the 25% of the students. So the cutoffs will be based on the easier papers, and based on that I would say this will be in the range of around 148
for
this will go
99.9%.
in the range of around 99.9
Yes,
plus
or
percent. It
148.
would, because slot 1, 2 and 4 were relatively easier than last year. But slot 3 was difficult compared to last year. So there's a huge gap between these. Now, unless they do some really wonderful work, I don't think the cutoffs will be justifying the slot 3 students, unfortunately. So this could be anywhere. So I will put a range, somewhere in the range of 147 to 148. Okay. This would be plus or minus 1 mark. So I'll write a single number. So guys, it will be plus or minus of 1 mark. So this would be in the range of about 144 to 145. 132 should go up to 135. So 3 to 4 marks. So typically what happens is the variation in the top levels, that is 98, 99, will not be that much. But when the difficulty level changes, then the lower percentiles will have a wide variation in the scores. So as you keep going lower to 99, 97, 96 and all, the variation will start happening. You can see that.
True that.
Yeah, so this should be in the range of around 129. This will be going up to 127 or 128. Sorry, this should be around 126 to 127. 115 should go up to 121. This should be coming up to around 110, and this 90 would be going in the range of about 98 or so. And the 75 should be going into the range of probably around 84 or 83.
84, yes.
This should be the cutoffs, or not cutoffs. This should be the percentiles. But again, it's very, very difficult, guys, to frankly judge what is going to happen because there were too many variables. Firstly, the difficulty level of the paper. Secondly, the extra time given. At the end of the day, if you're talking about 99.9 percentile, you are talking about 0.1% of 1.5 lakh people who will be writing. So that's what 0.1% is 1,500 people. Sorry, 150 people. 150 people could be from slot number 1 who had the unfair advantage. That could have been easily done. That's very much possible. So the cutoffs the percentile and score mapping can go completely haywire this year. So let's wait and see what happens.
So anything else? Any other question, guys?
Okay, yeah, this is another thing. In fact, Yogita is saying there were error questions.
Errors.
Yogita, it's not just in slot 2. There were errors in slot 2, there were errors in slot 3, there were errors in slot 4 and slot 1.
Absolutely.
There were errors everywhere.
That's
I believe the maximum errors were there in slot number 3. So that will also lead to probably, okay, I haven't taken the errors into consideration. If they give marks for all the errors, then probably the marks will go up by 1 or 2 marks. If they decrease the errors for everyone, then it will go down by 1 or 2 marks. That's basically the difference of what they will do, because we'll have to wait and see. It doesn't matter what they do because it's the same for everyone. So either everybody will increase or everybody will decrease, so that shouldn't matter.
So anything else, any other question, any other concern? Particularly since I teach English, if you have any issue with English and verbal reasoning, some question which is still bothering you, rankling you, staying in your mind, you can go ahead and ask and we can definitely talk about it. Otherwise, finally, Maharashtra CT does come to a close, and I hope I hope that the efforts that you've put in, that they do bear fruit, and you go ahead and get an amazing result moving forward. And those of you preparing for CMAT, do not allow your focus, your preparation to flag, to weaken. Make sure that you remain consistent and keep preparing. In case this session added value to you, don't forget to like it. And for those of you who are new here, do subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. Apart from the analysis, we take truckloads of sessions for you every day.
Oh yeah, guys, we have a lot of CMAT sessions coming your way. So please be with us. We are going to give you a ton of free material, free sessions. So please be with us throughout this journey till the CMAT exam and post-exam analysis too. All the very best, guys, and catch you soon in the other sessions of ours.
And we are at a lot of places wherever you are, so make sure that you do follow us. And if you have any more questions, you can head over to any of these platforms, including our Telegram group, where you can ask us questions.
Oh, they can leave it as a comment We'll reply to their questions.
Any of these platforms, absolutely. True. So that's it from us today. Have a nice evening, and we look forward to meeting you once again really soon in another one of our sessions. Until then, have fun, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Take care. Have a nice evening.
Bye, guys.